and see what those participants do. Hello, hello, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Hi, Marina, Yana, Tatiana, Katerina, Oksana, Karina. Thank you all for being on time. We're just going to wait a moment or two to allow everyone to arrive. Obviously, we understand that circumstances might be a little bit tricky today. That's no problem at all. But please do let us know which city you are joining us from today while we wait for everybody to turn up. So in the chats, I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. Let me know which city you're joining from. So we've got Natalie from Kiev, Dnipro, Pavlorad, Lviv, hi, Yana, Chernivtsi, Dnipro, hi, Oksana, Lviv, Tatiana, Kharkiv, Mykolaiv. Lovely. Thank you for joining. Thank you for letting us know where you are from. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so appreciated. You know, we're very much aware of the situation with everything and electricity supplies and stuff going on at the moment. So if for any reason your electricity goes, do not worry. The whole webinar is being recorded, okay? So if you drop out, you will get a copy of the link to the recording tomorrow, okay? So please don't worry about that. Tomorrow, you'll also receive your certificates, which I know are very important to you. They will all arrive together around this time tomorrow with an automated message from Zoom. So in terms of today, we've already found the chat button, which is great, but please do make sure that when you're using the chat, that you are messaging everyone rather than just myself, Ellie, and Irina as hosts and panelists. Make sure you click everyone so that we can join in the conversation together. And I know for my session, it will be very interactive, and I'm sure Ellie's, as always, will also be very interactive. So keep your fingers on the keyboard for the chat. Anything else I need to let you know? I think that's probably everything for now. So I'm just going to hand over to our colleague in Ukraine, which is Irina Marialova, who is our partner at Linguist, who would like just to say a few words. So Irina, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Irina Malarova. As some of you probably know, I'm a new LT consultant in Linguist company and also a proud representative of National Geographic Learning in Ukraine. You can always contact me if you have any questions about our courses. If you need some support about our digital resources, please, I welcome you to come to Linguist site and find my contacts and just mail to me. And I really want to say thank you for Alex and Ellie having the time to come today and to make this conference happen for us. I know it's challenging right now for us to join such events. As you can see, I also have a blackout and I need to deal with it, but still, thank you. I hope we will have more events that show how much they are interested in learning. So I really appreciate seeing you at all events that we plan for you in the future. So, Alex, I'm turning the word back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. So, just to give you a sort of quick outline of how things are going to work today, we're going to have our first session from Ellie in a moment, which will be about 50 minutes or so. Then we'll take a short break. So let's say from about 5 to the hour till 5 o'clock for you guys. We'll take a short 5-10 minute break, and then we'll have a second session with myself. So I think we've wasted enough time. Let me just introduce my colleague Ellie to you. So Ellie is the Young Learner Product Marketing Executive at National Geographic Learning, and she's been a teacher for a great number of years, teaching throughout different countries in Europe for the last 10, 15 years, Ellie, I guess. And she's been with us now at National Geographic Learning for 5 and a bit years. So Ellie, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alex. Okay, so we are going to get started. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Can everyone see that okay? If you can just let me know in the chat, or Alex?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yep.
Perfect. Looks
fantastic. Lovely. Brilliant. Okay, that's an excellent start. Right, so let's get started. So what we're going to be thinking about in this talk is SEL, or social and emotional learning. And just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do, we're going to think firstly about what SEL is. We're going to think about why it's important. And then the majority of the session, we're going to be looking at how we can introduce SEL into our young learner classrooms. And we're also going to think a little bit at the end about social and emotional learning for teachers as well. So not just for students, but for us as teachers too. So with all that in mind, we're going to begin with a quick social and emotional learning activity, just to check in with how you are all feeling. So I'd like you all to just, first of all, make sure that you're sitting in a comfortable position. And I'd like you to place your hands either just on your stomach or on your heart or in your lap, depending on what is most comfortable for you. Now, if you feel comfortable, you might want to close your eyes, but if you don't want to, that's fine, doesn't matter. Now, I'd like you to just take a few deep breaths and notice how you are feeling right now. Check in with the emotions that you're experiencing. Every emotion is welcome. Give yourself permission to be exactly as you are. Now, just take a few more moments here to think about how you are feeling. Now, I'd like you to choose 2 words to describe how you are feeling. So just think for a moment, what are 2 words to describe how you are feeling? Now, slowly start to move your fingers and your toes. Notice the sounds that you can hear, what's going on around you. And if you've kept your eyes closed, you can open them now. Okay, so I can see a few people are actually a little bit ahead of me, that's fine. So if you'd like to share in the chat, how are you feeling right now? So we've got tired but calm, calm and relaxed, calm and patient, ready and focused. Scared? Yeah, it's difficult situations right now. I'm not surprised. Peaceful, thinking about the sky. Calm and relaxed, calm and peaceful. Brilliant. Okay, it's a good start. Right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining me in that. Now, we're going to move on now to think about social and emotional learning proper. So our first step is to think about what it actually is. Now, I've chosen to share the Castle definition here on the slide right now. And I've chosen that one because I think it's one of the most useful definitions of social and emotional learning, because it can be easily applied to any age group, any educational context, and also it can be applied across different cultures. So from this definition, it is quite a long one, but we can see that SEL really consists of 3 things: how we understand ourselves and our emotions, how we get on with other people, and how we function in society as a whole. And in short, I really like to think of this and what social and emotional learning is as how to be a person in the world that we are living in. Now, I said that this was the CASTLE definition, and you're going to hear me mention them a few times throughout this session. This stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning. They are a non-profit organisation, and their aim is to build knowledge around SEL, to help educational institutions turn that research and that knowledge into action, and also to guide policymakers and legislation. And they've also put together one of the most widely recognised frameworks for SEL to explain what it is and to help educators put it into action. Now, CASTLE's framework for social and emotional learning revolves around 5 key competencies, 5 key areas. So I'm going to ask you in the chat, does anyone know what those 5 key areas are? What are the 5 key things that form a part of social and emotional learning? Or if you don't know, that's fine. Can you guess? What sort of things do you think are involved in social and emotional learning? Any ideas? Social awareness, relationships. Okay, thank you, Alex. Yep, great suggestions. Expressing emotions. Yep, thanks, Jana. Any other thoughts? Understanding emotions. Okay. Any more? Okay. Coping or dealing with emotions. Communication. That's an important one. Impulse control. Ability to work in a team. Calm. Thank you, Valentin. The ability to show emotions, friendship, says Katerina. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, really good ideas there. Understanding and communication. Okay, so you can see on the slide now what these 5 areas are. So they are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. But all of these actually contain lots of the ideas and things that you have spoken about. So let's just unpack these a little bit and think about what exactly they are. So the first key competency is self-awareness. This is how we think about ourselves and who we are. So it includes understanding our culture, our thoughts, our feelings, and what we believe about ourselves and what we're capable of achieving. It's a kind of emotional literacy, having this understanding about ourselves, and then understanding how all of these things can affect our behavior. So things that lots of you mentioned about understanding our emotions and maybe being able to communicate that to other people, that would come under this category. Our second one is self-management. So this is having the ability to manage those thoughts and emotions in difficult situations and different situations, particularly challenging ones. It's how we manage stress, or we deal with difficult emotions. Self-management is also about how we do things, how we use those skills of managing stress or managing emotions to then achieve goals or to work towards change. Now, social awareness is how we understand other people, being able to see things from someone else's point of view, being able to empathize with someone, even if they're different to us. It's also being aware of the broader culture that we live in, what the norms and the values for that culture are, and being part of society and a community. Now, several people mentioned relationship skills. So that's how we connect with those around us, how we form friendships. A couple of people mentioned friendships, and how we make connections. This includes things like communicating effectively with other people, solving problems, managing disagreements, or standing up for ourselves and the rights of others. And our final category is responsible decision making. So this is how all of those things come together to help us make good decisions. So this includes thinking critically, understanding how our actions affect ourselves and how they affect other people, and using skills like problem solving to help us make decisions that will have a positive impact. Okay, so all of these things sound like great aims, right? They all sound quite important. But we have vocabulary and grammar to teach. We have exams to prepare students for, maybe. We have homework to mark. We have only 24 hours in a day. And that's aside from all the other things that we have going on as well. So to play devil's advocate briefly, why should we care as English language teachers? Why does it matter? Well, I've got a little bit of an English language teaching favourite here for you, a true or false exercise. So I'm going to share 6 different statements here, 6 benefits of having well-developed SEL skills. I'd like you to tell me in the chat, which of these things do you think are true? So the first one is that these students find it easier to transition from primary school to secondary school. They are less likely to drop out of education. They're more successful academically. They have better self-esteem. They have better mental health. And they behave better. So what do we think? Which of these statements are true? Does anyone want to take a guess? Okay, so Alex says 2, 4, 5, and 6 are true. Okay. So you're thinking most of them, but not all of them. 1, 4, and 5 are true. Okay. And one more guess. What do we think? Which ones are true? No? Okay. So it's actually a little bit of a trick question, because the answer is actually these are all true. All 6 of them are true. Social and emotional learning is grounded in science. Research has shown that we think and we learn best when we have supportive relationships, when we feel secure and like we belong, and when we have opportunities to develop and practice our skills. Now, there have been 4 major meta-analysis studies that have focused on the benefits of using SEL in the classroom. These have evaluated hundreds of studies, including hundreds of thousands of students, and across a variety of different countries. They've also looked at both short and long-term outcomes, proving that introducing social and emotional learning into the classroom has long-lasting effects. It's not just something that has an initial impact and then goes away again. SEL builds on students' strengths. It's designed to help them learn about, appreciate, and develop their own identities, their interests, their talents, their perspectives. It's been shown to reduce risky behaviour and create better mental health, but it isn't designed to control children's behaviour. Instead, it's meant to enhance and develop the positives, the strengths that students already possess. Now, from a practical point of view, the research also shows that the effectiveness of SEL is not based on one particular culture or one particular educational context. It's been successfully introduced into many different school systems around the world. And it isn't something that requires specialist SEL experts. The research has shown that regular teachers can effectively teach these skills. So all of these are true, and there's lots and lots of evidence to support it. So we're going to move on then to think about how we can include SEL in our classrooms. So we've spoken about why it might be important, but what can we do about that? Well, firstly, we're going to check in with what the experts say. So this is from Castle again. Now, they suggest that SEL in the classroom often consists of three main areas. So firstly, SEL includes elements we probably already incorporate within our classroom and which we don't really think of necessarily as learning. Having a supportive classroom climate where students feel emotionally safe, they feel part of a community, they feel motivated and challenged, that actually forms the basis of social and emotional learning. This type of classroom creates a strong foundation for students to engage fully and take academic risks. We can develop this aspect of SEL by building community within our classroom. So that could be by learning about our students, by displaying their work, by having shared routines and activities, by ensuring that our students feel as safe as possible. So by modelling appropriate behaviour, by having a zero tolerance policy for bullying, and also by having student-centred discipline where appropriate. So that could look like creating a class contract, for example. Now, the second aspect that Castle highlights is integrating SEL into academic instruction. So can give students opportunities to practice and reflect on these competencies as part of the rest of their education. So students learning to understand other people's perspectives, developing a growth mindset, doing pair work or group work, working on their communication skills, all of those things are developing social and emotional learning skills. And SEL can also be explicit. We can look for opportunities to cultivate, to practice and reflect on social and emotional competencies in ways that are developmentally and culturally appropriate for our students. So for most of the rest of this session, we're going to take a practical look at how we can incorporate all three of these aspects in our classroom. So the first thing that we can think about is the content that we teach. And using course books based around real-world content, such as those produced by National Geographic Learning, give us a great opportunity to introduce our young learners to the world around them. We can show them different people, different places, different cultures, and help them to understand the role that our experience and our culture has in forming our identity. So we can focus on areas that have similarities across different cultures. So that might be things like food, for example. We could show our learners something like this and ask them, where do they buy food? What's similar to this picture? What's different to this picture, for example? So they probably buy their food from somewhere that's lots of different types of food. Maybe they also buy some food from the market, but there probably isn't a market on a boat, for example. We can think about things like clothes, or maybe looking at school, for example, or what children do in their free time. And we can show our learners that although they're maybe different from children in other countries, in many ways, they are the same. Their school classroom might look different to this one, but they're still going to school, they're still studying in the same way that these other children are. And this can help develop both self-awareness, examining prejudices, and social awareness, understanding and being tolerant of diversity. And we can also support our students developing self-awareness by allowing them to maybe suggest topics that they're interested in and they would like to study. We can also include social and emotional learning more explicitly in terms of the language and the vocabulary that we teach. So for younger or lower level learners, this might look like something like teaching the names of different emotions and encouraging them to recognize and name how they're feeling. So we did an activity like that at the beginning of this session, where I asked you to just check in and let me know 2 words that describe how you're feeling. This is something that we could do with our students, or we could do it as part of a circle time activity at the beginning of the lesson. Ask all of our students how they are and encourage them to use this language, use these terms to name and to recognize how they are feeling. Now, for older learners, we might want to think about different concepts that form part of social and emotional learning. So this unit here is looking at the idea of trying something new, doing something different. But we could choose to add in a little bit of extra vocabulary here. We might want to teach them words like growth mindset or self-esteem if we're thinking about trying new things, or even just draw our learners' attention to these concepts without actually naming them, encouraging them to do something that maybe they're not good at, or maybe they don't know if they're good at it or not because they haven't tried it before. I also like sharing this example here because learners are thinking about their hobbies and interests, but they're thinking about what they were in the past and what they are now. So they're developing their self-awareness. They're thinking about themselves and about what they were like when they were younger, what they're like now. But we're also introducing this idea that they can change, that they can be different. Just because they maybe were a particular way in the past, they are maybe not the same now. Just because they are a certain way now, maybe that will be different for them in the future. It's not always necessarily going to be true. Now, we can also choose to teach aspects of social and emotional learning explicitly as part of values education. So in this lesson, for example, we're talking about looking after our surroundings and our possessions. They're thinking about their school environment and how can they look after it? Can they help tidy up, for example? And that feeds into social awareness and making good decisions, taking responsibility for the environment that they're in. Or maybe here, for example, we're thinking about being aware and accepting of differences. We've got an activity that's thinking about a person who has special educational needs, who sees the world in a different way to other people, but they're presented as someone who's doing something amazing, who's doing something really different and unusual and interesting. And so we're developing their acceptance of differences there. Or again, in this example here, this person maybe doesn't look like who we first think of when we think of an amazing athlete, but actually that doesn't matter. They are someone who is an amazing athlete, even though they have a disability, even though they have maybe faced challenges that other people haven't faced. So again, we're building students' awareness of differences and their tolerance of that. Now, we can also develop our learner skills in terms of how we teach, in terms of the activities that we prioritize. So one of the things that we mentioned when we looked at those 5 key competencies was the idea of conflict resolution. And that obviously is quite a big topic, and it's something that feels very adult when we're thinking about teaching young learners. But actually, we can work towards that, even though our students are very young, by focusing on games or activities that help learners to find common ground, to build trust and understanding. We also have spoken a lot about communication and the importance of that. And actually, a lot of what we're doing in the English language classroom is developing our students' communication skills. Yes, we're teaching them the vocabulary and the grammar that they need to communicate successfully in English, but we can also think about the non-verbal side of communication as well. So we might want to teach them some things about how to be a good listener, for example, about why it's important when you're listening to make eye contact with the person, to not fidget, to sit as though you are being attentive, to have an attentive posture to that person, and things like that. So those non-verbal skills still form an important part of communication. And actually, that's something that they can then carry over into the rest of their education as well, outside of just their English class. Now, the first aspect that we spoke about in terms of the Castle ideas for what forms the basis of social and emotional learning in the classroom was building a supportive classroom climate. So there are different ways that we can do that. We can involve our students in decision-making within the classroom. So it could take the form of making a class contract where we think about behaviour. We can display student work on the walls of the classroom if that's appropriate, if that's an option, and give them the opportunity to take pride in their work, but also to feel ownership over the physical classroom space. Or we can give our students roles and responsibility within the class, for example, by handing out worksheets or being responsible for making sure that the board is clean, for example. I always found this amusing because I always had no end of volunteers who always wanted to clean the board. It was the funnest thing in the world, and I never really quite worked out what the appeal was of cleaning the board, but I'm fairly confident that if you have a student in your class who is dedicated as the board monitor, whose responsibility is to clean the board, you'll probably have some quite enthusiastic uptake. Now, we mentioned about offering our students some choice as part of our, clicked too hard there, as part of the lesson, and where appropriate, and taking into account the age and abilities of your students. We can build that supportive classroom climate by offering them choice. So this could be a choice whether they work in groups or whether they work on their own. It could be a choice about how they choose to present their work. So do they do a spoken presentation? Do they do a poster? Do they make a short video? Or it could be the choice to choose their own topic or to choose from more than one activity. Now, I've included some examples of project work here because project-based learning offers plenty of opportunities for students to make choices about how they will work, and also allow them to develop lots of these skills, developing their communication skills, their critical thinking skills, and also enabling them to fully exploit their curiosity in exploring a topic. And they also offer opportunities for students to tackle relevant real-world topics and to make connections to the outside community. For example, a project maybe could include something that learners can do at home, or a way in which they can have an impact on their wider community. Just a couple more examples of projects. Now, we can also develop our learners' self-awareness by encouraging them to develop self-assessment skills. So even with quite young or low-level learners, we can use a traffic light system to encourage them to assess their input in class. Green for good, yellow for orange, yellow or orange for okay, and red for maybe needs a bit more work. Or we could use that to assess their understanding as well. In the same way, green would be, yes, I understand this really well. Yellow or orange is I'm not sure. There are some bits I understand, but maybe I need some more help or I need some more work. Red, I really don't understand this. I need a lot more help. I need a lot more input on this. And this could be done as a blind hands up if you wanted, if you think that your students will feel more comfortable with that way. So everyone close their eyes or put their heads down on the desk and just hold up the colour of the card that matches what you want to share. We could also use simple smileys to ask learners to assess their work, like the one in the middle here or the one on the right. And we could use those either at checkpoints throughout the lesson, so during the lesson itself, or at the end of the lesson as well. Why do we want to do self-assessment? Well, it prepares students to take responsibility for their own learning. It prompts internal motivation to learn. It enables the perception of strengths and weaknesses, and that's a key part really of that self-awareness. So they're not just thinking about their emotions and how they feel about it, but they're also being aware of who they are, what they're good at, what they're less good at, what they maybe need to try a bit harder on, maybe what they need to do a bit more work on, maybe what their attitude actually is to learning or to the work that they're doing. It builds students' trust in themselves. If they can see that they think that they did really well, and actually, yeah, their teacher has confirmed this. They did do really well on the assignment. And it also enhances their self-esteem as well. It gives students confidence because they can see how they are improving. And finally, we can also think about how we offer feedback. So to develop our student social and emotional learning, we might want to consider rewarding different things. We maybe just don't want to just reward academic achievement, how well they've done, how many marks out of 10 or what percentage, but also think about other things. Think about determination, think about integrity, cooperation or tolerance, how well they worked with their partner or how well they worked as part of a group. They're often things that maybe don't get rewarded explicitly, but they are just as important in some ways, or even more important in some ways than just academic achievement. Okay, so before we move on to our final part, I'd like you to think of one way that you are going to develop your student social and emotional learning that you could take into your classes this week, and share that in the chat box if you'd like to. So what's one thing that you can do to develop your students' social and emotional learning? Okay, no one wants to share. That's absolutely fine. Doesn't matter. You can just have it in your head. That's no problem. Oh, wait. Oh, we've got a few coming in. So, develop some negotiated classroom rules. Using the traffic light cards. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the final bit of my session today. So, all of that is a lot to take in terms of our students. Oh, I've just spotted. Thank you, Oksana. Yes, so Oksana, you're going to ask questions. Why not? What's your opinion? Yeah, definitely. It's great to get our students' opinions and their feedback on what we're doing. Okay, So as we said at the beginning of this session, social and emotional learning is for everyone. It isn't just for children. So what about us as teachers? Why might SEL be important? Well, the research that has been done on SEL shows that there are lots of benefits for us as teachers too. So 46% of teachers report high daily stress, which affects their health, their sleep, their quality of life, and their teaching. We know that when teachers are highly stressed, their students show lower levels of social adjustment and academic performance. This one is one that I think is particularly interesting because it's not what I expected, which is there was a study that looked at teachers who had been instructed to teach these skills, but they didn't actually do any development themselves. And they actually found that in this situation, the students' social and emotional learning skills actually got worse. Children learn these skills better when their teachers can effectively model these skills. The teacher social and emotional learning influences the quality of teacher-student relationships. So all of that things we were saying about having a positive, supportive classroom climate, teacher social and emotional learning has an impact on that. And finally, adults who recognize, who understand, who label and regulate their own emotions are less likely to report burnout, to develop higher levels of patience and empathy, and encourage healthy communication and create safe student learning environments. So I think this is all actually quite a conclusive reason why social and emotional learning is important for us as teachers too. It's something that I personally know that I'm really interested in and really passionate about. And part of that is because I have a 17-month-old daughter. So I noticed that we are talking about all of these things, my husband and I, and we're trying to think how we can encourage her to express her emotions in positive ways and how we can model the way that we want her to act, particularly if she's upset or angry and things like that, and what she's seeing us do. And often what I think about all of this is, well, I want to learn this. I think this is important for me to learn. So I wanted to share some ideas that I've come across that can help us as adults, as teachers, to learn and to develop these skills. So the first category then that we're thinking about, I've gone back to these 5 different framework, 5 different elements that Castle had in their framework, the 5 key competencies. So the first thing is to acknowledge your own emotions. That's really the first part that we can do to acknowledge and to improve our self-awareness. And also how those emotions might then play into our reactions or our behavior. So I asked you at the beginning of the session to think about how you were feeling, and just to choose 2 words to name how you're feeling. So those of you who said that you were feeling calm, that's great. But those of you who said that you were tired or that you were scared, just acknowledging that and appreciating that, okay, that's how I feel. That might mean that maybe I won't be paying attention as well as maybe I would like to, or I won't remember as much of this webinar as I'd like to. And that's okay. That doesn't matter. It's just acknowledging that that might have an impact on your actions. We can think out loud with our students where appropriate when we're using SEL skills. So this helps our students to see that you are still learning and you're still practicing these skills too. We mentioned about asking students for feedback. I think someone mentioned about asking our students for their opinion. And this is something that we can do in terms of activities in class or materials that we use in class. We can ask our students, I tried something new today. What did you think? Should we do it again? And then potentially take that on board. We can demonstrate growth mindset by describing how we have overcome a challenge or achieved a goal. And also very important, be kind to yourself. Remember that we are all human and you're not always going to be your best self at every moment of every day. That's also an important part of self-awareness, just trying to keep that in mind and trying to recognize and remember that. Now we're going to move on to the second competency now, and that's self-management. So that's all about being in control of your emotions. So as much as it often sounds like a cliche and it's hard to implement at the best of times, it's super hard to implement if you're in difficult situations yourself. But this is where self-care comes in, making sure that you are looking after yourself, that you're eating properly as much as possible, that you're getting exercise, that you're spending time with friends or doing things socially, that you're getting enough sleep. The reason why all of that is important is because it's going to build up your own resilience. It's going to build up your own coping mechanisms. Self-care isn't going to make difficult situations magically go away, but it is going to help you to be more equipped to deal with them. It's going to help you when you are in that situation to cope. And on a related note, using stress management strategies, that could be as simple as talking to a friend. It could be trying to go for a walk outside. It could be doing something that you know that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to find relaxing. Setting goals for yourself or for your teaching. So what's a new idea or a new activity that you could try in your classroom? Trying to reframe things. So it's far, far easier said than done, but trying to approach new or unexpected situations in your classroom as a learning opportunity. So having a really challenging class could be an opportunity for you to learn or to grow as a teacher. Or equally, I know lots of people when the pandemic started and people were having to switch to teaching online, for example, it was obviously a very difficult situation, but it also gave people an opportunity to try out different things, to become more confident with using technology that they maybe hadn't used before. And acknowledging things as well that cause stress in our students' lives and modelling practices for dealing with that, for managing with the stress and the difficult situations. Now, the third one was social awareness. So what could we do as teachers to develop our social awareness or to show this in the classroom? Well, firstly, we can model it. We can show our students appreciation and acceptance of other people's beliefs and other people's cultural differences. Maybe if we don't know something about that, maybe we can educate ourselves about it. We can consider our students' perspectives on decisions that we make. Of course, you don't have to take their opinions into account all the time. That wouldn't be appropriate. But there might be occasions when it is an option. For example, if you know that they've got a big exam coming up that they're stressed about, or you know that another teacher has given them lots and lots of homework, maybe giving them less homework one week, for an example, or maybe doing some kind of fun lesson where you do something that you know that they're going to really enjoy, maybe watching something or playing lots and lots of games as an opportunity to wind down and relax after a really stressful period. On a related note, being willing to compromise a little bit, taking into account what your students want and need, what you need, and trying to find a balance between those two things. And of course, noticing and addressing any kind of bullying behaviour in our classrooms. Now, relationship skills. Firstly, it's vitally important that we get to know our students and also let them get to know us within appropriate boundaries. Again, we spoke about asking our students opinions. So this is something that we could implement here. We can try and get some feedback from our students, but also make sure that we give constructive feedback for our students. Make sure that we're highlighting what they do well as what they could do with working on or improving. And again, with modelling fairness, respect and appreciation for others, with our colleagues, with our students, and with the environment that we are working in and living in as well. And equally praising and acknowledging as well. We mentioned earlier about what we might praise in the classroom, whether or not it is just academic achievement or whether or not we think about some of these other aspects that are also important, things like teamwork or perseverance or actually just effort. Our students trying really hard, even if they find something really difficult, even if they actually don't get a very good result at the end of it, if we know that they've actually put in lots and lots of effort into that, making sure that we acknowledge that. Now, our final category was responsible decision making. And of course, to some extent in the classroom, we are making huge amounts of decisions all the time. We decide what activities we're going to do. We decide what order we're going to do them in. We decide when it's the right time to move on. We decide things like what pairs we're going to put our students in. We decide whether or not our students have understood in order to carry on with the next part of an activity. But there are other areas that we can think of as well. So we can model responsible decision making by showing our students things like problem solving strategies. If there's a disagreement between two students in our class, we might want to try and gather all of the relevant information before drawing a conclusion. For example, we could say something like, I didn't see what happened. Can both of you tell me your side of the story? And then we'll decide what to do next. We can incorporate our student feedback and perspectives when making decisions. And we might want to make decisions collectively where appropriate. So we spoke about having a class contract. We might want to decide collectively what are going to be the rules for our classroom. How are we going to implement them? Maybe even what might happen if we don't abide by those rules in our classroom. Okay, so lots and lots of ideas for you as teachers as well. But again, I'm going to ask you the same question. How are you going to develop your own social and emotional learning skills this week? What are you going to do? So I know for me, I'm going to try and include some of that self-care activities because I know it's been very busy here. It's a busy time of year. It's leading up to Christmas for us. And so I've got a lot of things going on. I need to remember to take some time for myself within all of that. Does anyone have any other thoughts about what they might do? So Larissa is saying about giving her students belief in themselves. Yeah, that's so important, Larissa. That's definitely a really, really key thing that we can do as teachers, definitely. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your participation in this session, everyone. It's been lovely to be here and to speak to you and to share these ideas and to talk about social and emotional learning. The examples from course books that I shared with you today are from this series here, which is called Wonderful World 2nd edition. And you can see the website there if you want to take a look at that, or equally Irina from Linguist will be able to help you out if you would like to learn more about this series or to take a further look at it. And I also just wanted to share before I hand over to Alex, if you found any of this helpful, if there are ideas that you would like to hear more about, or you'd like to learn more ideas, tips, activities for your young learner classroom, then I write a monthly young learner newsletter, which has got lots of tips and ideas and activities in, which you can subscribe to if you would like. And you can see the QR code here. If you scan that with your phone, it will take you to a link that you can just complete the sign up form. And you can also view the last month's one, so you can just get an idea of what it is before you say that you'd like to receive it. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to pass back to Alex.
And well, thank you, Ellie, for a really insightful session. And I think right now it is so important, this topic, given everything that's going on in Ukraine at the moment. I think, for you, it's such an important aspect to make sure that your students are feeling that they're in an environment which is safe, supportive, and encouraging for them, and looking after that emotional well-being, because with so much going on, it's going to be hard for them. We know that, and it's our job as teachers to make sure that we kind of help them as much as possible in that aspect as well. Not easy, but an important topic. So thank you, Ellie, for talking about that. I'm going to pass it back to you very quickly, Ellie. There's a question for you in the chat.
I've just spotted. I'm in the midst of typing an answer.
That's fine. Do you want to?
I can answer it. I can answer it out loud if you would like, or it depends if people would like to move into the break.
I mean, answer it quickly, Ellie, it's fine.
Okay, cool. So the question, the Q&A was, Oksana's asking, should the teachers change their decisions when students insist on it? I would say with that, it depends very much on what the decision is, to be honest. If it's something that's a small decision that's fairly inconsequential, for example, you want to do a particular activity and your students don't want to do that, then I would say, yeah, by all means, change your decision. If it is something that is a much larger decision that's going to have a bigger consequence, like you decided, or your school even has decided your students must sit a particular end of year exam and your students don't want to, then no, your students need to learn how to compromise as well. It does go both ways. So I think it depends a lot on the situation, the decision, and ultimately how important the decision is, because ultimately you are the teacher and you are the one that's in charge. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellie. So listen, we're going to take a short break for 5 minutes. Okay, 5-minute break. So grab yourself some tea, some coffee, something stronger, and maybe a biscuit or a piece of cake if you can, okay? And we'll see you in 5 minutes for my session, where I will be talking all about oracy. And if you want to know what that is, come back in 5 minutes. So see you shortly. Thank you, Ellie. Okay, hi everybody, and welcome back for round 2 of today's Ukraine Young Learner online conference, where I'm going to be talking all about oracy. Should give everyone a couple of moments just to make sure they're back at their desks, back on their phones for the session. In fact, maybe just let me know in the chat box, give me a thumbs up to let me know you are all ready for this second session. While you're doing that, just want to say thank you once again to Ellie for what is a really important topic to raise awareness of. Okay. So here we go. So this session is going to be all about oracy, and we're going to explore what exactly it is, what we mean by it, why we should be including it in our classroom, and of course, the most important part, how. How can we integrate it into our language classes as seamlessly as possible? So let's make a start. Excuse me. So, oracy, what exactly is it? Well, before I give you an official definition of what it is, I just want to know what your thoughts are. What are your interpretations of what oracy might be? Is it a term with which you're familiar, or is it a brand new term that you don't know what it is, but maybe you can have a good guess at what it actually might mean? So I'll give you a moment to have a think and to share your thoughts in the chat box. Suggestions. Is anybody going to Google it and give me a Wikipedia definition? Okay, look, speaking of reading skills, thank you, Oksana. Good guess, oral speaking. Okay, good suggestions. And, you know, an art of speaking, I like that, Natalia, the idea of an art of speaking. And I think that that kind of is the nearest definition we've got there. Because oracy, it isn't just speaking and listening. It's more nuanced than that. So, what exactly is it? It's this. It's the skill, or to quote Natalia, the art of communicating confidently in a variety of situations, from giving presentations in front of an audience to successfully participating in group discussions and collaborative activities. But it's also the skill of listening actively. It's about reading group dynamics. It's about facilitating shared decision-making. So straight away, we can see various aspects of language learning and 21st century skills coming into this. It is about collaboration. It's about being respectful to one another. And it's about the skills of being able to present yourself and your ideas effectively and efficiently. Yeah, Tatiana, absolutely. It's an instrument to express our own abilities, but it is more than just speaking and listening. That's the key thing here. And I just want to share with you a framework for oracy from Cambridge, and you've got the address down there as well. And they actually split the idea of oracy into 4 parts. So we have the physical aspect of what oracy is, the linguistic aspect, the cognitive aspect, and linking to what Ellie was talking about, the social and emotional aspect of it. And essentially what this framework does, it specifies the different skills that young people need to develop to deal with a range of different talk situations. So this applies to the collaborative work, the presentations, as well as the discussion work. And it's been developed by drawing on an available list of resources and research in consultation with a range of experts. And it's been designed to help school leaders, teachers, and pupils to understand what it means to be successful in discussion, in inspiring speech, and an effective communication. Because these things, they don't just come naturally. We have to help our students. We have to nurture it within them in many respects. So it's nice to have a framework from which to go by. So what exactly makes up these different aspects? So within physical, we have voice, which is things like your fluency, your pace, your change of tone, the clarity of your pronunciation, and also, of course, your voice projection. Can they hear you at the back of the room? Are you whispering really quietly? So you're really shy, for example. But it's also about your body language, your gesture, your posture. Because if you're standing giving a presentation and you're slumped over or you're like this, and it's not giving a positive impression. So eye contact, facial expressions are all very important. Specifically here, we're talking about presentations, but also within collaborative work as well. We then have the linguistic side of things. And here we're talking about vocabulary. Are we choosing the appropriate words for the appropriate time? It's about register. It's about the grammar. So these are things which obviously feed really nicely into our work as language teachers. How formal should it be? How informal should it be? And it's also about those rhetorical techniques, using metaphor, humor, irony, mimicry. And then we have the cognitive aspect of the framework. So we're starting here with content. Choice of content to convey meaning and intention, building on the views of others. Someone suggested an idea. How am I reacting to that? How am I building on those ideas? It's about structure, specifically here for presentations, about the organization of a talk, having the beginning, middle, and the end, having the signposting language. First of all, I'm going to talk about this. We're going to move on now to talk about this. After that, and so forth. It's about being able to clarify and summarize what you're saying, what other people have said, seeking information, clarification through questioning. So what you mean to say is this. I think what you mean is this. So that element of summarizing comes through. And then reasoning, giving reasons to support your views. You can't just say, I think this. We need to support it. We need to show students, you can't just say something. What evidence do you have to support your views? What reasons? And it's also about critically examining those ideas and views expressed. So multiple levels there within the cognitive aspect. And then, like I said, linking to what Ellie talked about, the social and emotional side of things, working with others, so important, especially when we're working collaboratively or in a discussion group. We don't want to offend other people. So turn taking is a really important part here. What do you think? How about you? What's your opinion, Ellie, for example? But it's also about listening carefully. It's not just hearing someone, it's about responding to them. You know, oh, that's a really good idea. I agree with you because of this. That's an interesting point. Not just being passive recipients, we want to be active recipients, active listeners. But also it comes in about the confidence in speaking, self-assurance, liveliness, flair. So that links actually quite closely with the physical element as well. And then also audience awareness, specifically when we're giving presentations, taking into account the understanding of the audience. Can you see that they've understood? Online, incredibly difficult to do because I'm relying on the chat box. But if I'm reading an audience, it's being able to sort of make sure that they're following me, that I haven't lost them. So, you know, oracy clearly is not an easy thing to pin down. There are multiple elements to it, multiple sides. So I think having a framework like this can be really, really helpful. Okay, so that's what oracy is. But why? Why should we care about it in the language classroom? What are the benefits, do we think? How can it help my students? Not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, in the future. Have a quick think once again, and maybe share any ideas that you might have. How can teaching oracy in our classes help students, not just in our class, but other classes as well, outside in their real life? And I should just say that oracy isn't just something for the English language classroom. It's something for all classrooms. It is a life skill. It's something that they can take, well, they need to learn in their own language, and they can use in their geography classes, their social sciences classes, their history classes, their Ukrainian classes, and so forth. Any ideas? What might the benefits be? Well, I'm going to share a quote with you from the English Speaking Union, who've done a lot of work on oracy based on research. And this is what they have to say. They say that the benefits of oracy go beyond academic achievement and employability, which are really important. They boost a whole range of social, emotional, and interpersonal skills. So linking back to what Ellie said, including self-confidence, self-awareness, resilience, empathy. It also has been shown to enhance our sense of happiness and well-being. Are these things that we want for our students? 100% they are. We want them to be more confident. We want them to have greater empathy, resilience. We want them to be happy. And developing their oracy skills can help them do that. Because it's not just about themselves, it's about working with the people around them as well, and making them feel confident, making them feel good about the contributions that they are making within a collaborative task, within a discussion activity. It's about having that respect for others. So just to kind of put that into a bit of a clearer table for you. Yes, oracy helps achieve higher academic success in exams. Research has shown that. It does improve their language skills, improves their literacy, and it has that positive impact on their cognitive development. Positive impact on self-esteem and well-being. And as Ali was saying, it facilitates social and emotional learning. But here's some interesting research that I think really kind of solidifies what we're trying to say here. And that is that 97% of teachers and 94% of employers and 88% of young people believe that life skills such as confidence, motivation, resilience, and communication, i.e. oracy skills, are as or more important than academic qualifications. And certainly if we look at different global skill sets, for example, for 21st century learning, they have the 4 C's. We have the OECD, we have the PISA descriptors that all focus to an extent on communication skills. You can be as intellectually, academically successful as you can, but without the appropriate oracy skills, communication skills, you might struggle. Communication is at the heart of what we want to achieve. And of course, as language teachers, that is our primary goal, to make them efficient communicators, in our case, in English. So that's what it is. That's why we should be including in our classroom practice. The big question is how? How can we integrate it into our language classes? And I think the first thing I have to say is that we can integrate it everywhere. We can integrate it into our grammar lessons. We can integrate it into our speaking lessons, of course, our vocabulary lessons, our writing lessons. It can come in everywhere. It's just knowing how. But what underpins all of this really is the content that we use in our classrooms. Because we need content that is going to get students talking, that encourages them to share their views, share their ideas. I cannot stress that enough. In other words, we have to give them something to talk about, something meaningful, something relevant, something worthwhile. So, how can we do that? We show them the world. We give them images that make them go, wow, and have an opinion about. So I was going to show you some here. And I just want you to think, what would you say about these photographs, these lessons? We've all got something to say because they are making us curious. They're giving us ideas. Because they are, first of all, yes, they're amazing pictures, but they're real world. Whether it's a picture, whether it's a story, an article. It's far more interesting to talk about things like this than maybe more traditional course books. So how did all those images, how did those texts, how did they make you feel? What emotions came forth from that? Tell me in the chat box. How did all that make you feel? What emotions, what feelings ran through you? Maybe you felt excited. Maybe you felt motivated. Maybe you felt happy. But all positive emotions and feelings, I'm sure. And the point being here really is that if you're feeling these things, you're going to want to explain why and talk about it. You don't want to talk about boring things. You want to talk about exciting things. And I think this kind of summed it up for me. Real-world content is a great springboard for oracy skills development because it gives students something real and meaningful to talk about. That in turn leads to memorable and exciting educational experiences. Okay. And that is what underpins it all. Students need to have something to say about, to talk about. But to make and to develop oracy skills more effectively, we do need to make sure there are certain ground rules that we put in place for our students, because we want them to feel safe and secure in the classroom. And again, this links to what Ellie was talking about and creating classroom rules. So what kind of oracy ground rules could we have in our classes to ensure that we are being respectful of one another, to ensure that we are working together? Any thoughts or ideas before I share some with you? What kind of ground rules do we need to make sure that students are working together in an environment where they feel safe, that they can exactly respect each other? Thank you, Tatiana. And they certainly should respect each other. I mean, things like this, especially when looking at the lower primary classroom here. Lovely, Oksana, do not interrupt each other. It's on my list here. We listen to each other. We are patient. We take turns. We help each other. We share. We ask the shy students to join in. We don't shout or speak loudly. We pay attention. We ask questions of each other if we don't understand. These are very basic ground rules to show respect to one another within discussion tasks, within collaborative tasks. And if we're looking at sort of upper primary rather, we're going to make them a little bit more complex. So similar ideas though, we listen carefully to each other. We participate by agreeing or disagreeing and sharing our ideas. We do not interrupt again or speak over somebody. We're patient. We give other students the opportunity to speak. We don't dominate. We ask questions. We give positive feedback. Oh, that was a great idea you said there, Tatiana. Really like that. Fantastic. We make group decisions after we hear everybody talk. We don't just listen to ourselves and our own ideas. We share, we listen, we respect others. And if we have these ground rules, it ensures that everyone feels happy, comfortable, confident to join in and to contribute to the discussions. And just very briefly, that was kind of the group work and discussion work. But if we're looking at presentations, we've got some different ideas here. You know, we speak clearly. We don't speak too fast. We stand up straight. We make eye contact. We organize our presentation. We practice. And then for the audience, we listen actively. We listen carefully. We ask questions at the end of the presentation. We don't talk during it. We tell the speaker we can't hear them. Okay, so what this can then kind of be used as is as a checklist. When you're doing an oracy lesson, you might be saying, okay, we're going to be working on, we're doing some group work today, but we're going to be focusing on these oracy skills. Are we doing these things? Are you listening to each other? Are you asking each other questions? Are you being patient? And they can self-assess, or the teacher can assess as well. But Before we sort of move on though, I just want to ask this question. Who do you think should be deciding on these ground rules? Who should be setting them? Is it something that should come from the teacher? Something that should come from the school administration? Who do you think should be making these ground rules? The Rada said both. Any other suggestions? Deliberately not said one group. Yeah, absolutely, Tatiana. Teachers and students. It's so important to involve the learners in this process, because if they create the ground rules themselves, they have greater accountability. After all, it is their rules, their ideas, and therefore they are more likely to follow them and obey them. Exactly, Oksana. It is a collective solution. That whole task is an oracy task. So how can we do this? A couple of activities here. So you could put students into groups, discuss what actions or behaviors make it difficult or hard for you or other students to work together. And they'll come up with things like when somebody talks too much, when we don't listen to each other, and so on. So by definition, you can then turn those into the ground rules, or ask them a more specific question. What rules do we need to follow to work together? Well, to work together successfully, we need to respect each other. We need to listen to each other. We need to turn take appropriately. What rules do we need to follow to present our work to class? Well, I need to speak clearly. I need to stand up straight. I need to organize my presentation. What should we do when we're watching our classmates present? Well, we shouldn't talk. We should listen actively. We should make some notes. We should ask questions, and so on and so forth. But the point is, we're putting the decision-making here really in the hands of the students. And as a teacher, you can guide it and you can make your own suggestions, but ultimately, these are classroom rules for oracy that the students are developing themselves. Now, so that's one thing that we really have to do at the start of the process of oracy. The other thing that we need to do is to provide them with a helping hand, because we cannot expect students to have the language to help them to do these activities, to be able to, turn take, to give feedback, etc. So we need to provide language frames and cue cards to our learners. And these are absolutely vital to oracy, because they almost become speaking routines, whereby every time they have a speaking activity, a group work activity, a collaborative task, they can take out their language frames and use them. And the more they use them, the more familiar they get, the more memorable they become, and all of a sudden they've learned them. Not as a grammar lesson, but as an oracy skill, as an oracy technique. So what exactly are language frames? Well, they are a research-based method for assisting language learners, students with disabilities, learners who may struggle with written or verbal expression. They're there to help and support. They provide a foothold into the conversation, as well as a structure for responding to questions or even asking questions. What do you think, Oksana? What do you think, Tatiana? What's your opinion? And what that does then, it helps them to build their own internal templates for expressive language. And it might be initially that they're fill in the blank format that helps them to ask and answer questions, verbally or in writing. But ultimately what it does, it gives them scaffolded support for the students. And I think this really kind of sums it up. They empower ELLs, English language learners, to be able to have conversations with their peers without having the pressure that they will make a mistake or that they will offend someone with their words. They're a great tool to support ELLs to feel free to talk, to agree, to disagree, and even to ask if they do not understand something in a respectful manner. So they are the absolute vital tool to making sure oracy works in a respectful, collaborative, communicative way. So, of course, we need to teach them. So here's an example taken from our world where we are teaching them specific oracy expressions for agreeing with each other and for disagreeing with each other, as well as one there for presentations about organization, introducing it, staging it. So we can teach it explicitly in lessons like that, or something that I always had in my classrooms. And when I worked as a director of studies, I made sure that all of my classrooms had around them was to have little bubbles, expressions dotted around the classroom or around the board so that students have instant access to them. So you can just look up and say, oh, that's a great idea. I disagree because. Can I stop you for a moment? What do you think? I'm not sure I understand. And once they have these, once they start using them, getting familiar with them, they'll become automatic pieces of text that they can bring out time and again. Same for presentations. There's lots of simple presentation language here that we can give to students. Thank you for all coming. Today I'm going to talk about this, first of all. Secondly, in this picture, moving on to the next point. For example, are there any questions? These all facilitate that process of enabling students to give effective, in this case, presentations. So, two things that we need to make sure students have access to: ground rules and language frames or cue cards. What we then have to do is give them the activities in which to practice them. So this is the how. So I'm going to give you a number of activities that we can use to facilitate discussion. Some of these you will be familiar with, some of them will be new, I am sure. And we're going to start off with one of my favorite activities of all time. And that is the very simple I see, I think, I wonder activity. And this works brilliantly as an oracy activity because it's just giving what I think, what I wonder. So, you know, I can see people sat down in chairs with helmets on, fine. I think that they might be astronauts. I think they might be watching a training video. I wonder why they're sat apart from each other. I wonder who they are. What about you? What do you think? What's your opinion? What do you wonder? Turn-taking skills, using those language frames. So tell me, what do you wonder about this photograph? What do you think about this photograph? And use these language frames as well. These are language frames in themselves. I think this. I wonder this. Tell me in the chat box. What do you think? What do you wonder? Of course, we're doing this sort of in a written format, but in an oral format, it works really nice with students just sharing their ideas. Any suggestions? What do you think? There's no right answer here either, I should say. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. I wonder what you think. Tell me in the chat. Okay, that's a great idea, Irina. I really like that. But I might ask you to say why. Why do you think that? Remember, with oracy, we have to give reasons why, explaining why we think something. Backing it up. Supporting it. I think they were at a conference during the pandemic. That's a brilliant idea. So again, I'm giving you confidence, I'm responding. I wonder what they're training. Yeah, I agree. I wonder what they're training for. Are they training to be astronauts? Are they training to be, I don't know. I think the guy on the left looks like he's going to fall asleep. I'm going to point at him. This guy here, it looks like he's nodded off at the front. Maybe, I wonder why he's falling asleep. Okay, I'll give you another picture. What about this one? Obviously we can see a bear and some children. What do you think or wonder about this image? What do you wonder? I wonder if the bear's hungry. I wonder why the boys aren't running away. I think that it must be a show bear or a tame bear, maybe. I think there's a very big teeth. Yeah, nice, Irina, like that. I wonder if the bear is friendly to people. I wonder if the bear is happy. Yeah, how wild is it? Lovely. Oh, that's a great question. How wild is it? Or conversely, how tame is it? I mean, it's big. I mean, it's as big as they are, as tall as they are, right? We'll do one more. I wonder why the boy has made such a great face. Such a face, lovely. I think Marianne, maybe. How about this one? What do you wonder about this? I love this photograph. It's one of my favorite in all the Our World books. It's just a strange image. I wonder what it's like to live there. I think the man or the people that live there must be very nomadic, or they can't enjoy being with other people. It is so peaceful, right? Who built this house? Or how the house built? How long did it take? It's brilliant questions, guys. And then we can discuss these, right? But the point here is that we can then link all of these to different language frames that we spoke about just now. So in this picture, I can see, what do you think? How about you? Yeah, I agree. Oh yeah, me too. Why do you say that? Why do you think that? Anything else? Have you got any other ideas? So on and so forth, right? But we're getting that response. We're working together in a discussion. Okay, another activity we can do is the personal viewing. So again, we can provide language frames to help them, but first of all, the questions. How does it make you feel and why? Does it remind you of anything? What? Do you think it's a positive or a negative image? Why? What do you think the story is? What do you think the message is? What is your opinion? What is your view of these images? So have a look at this one here and tell me what you think. How does it make you feel and why? Does it remind you of anything? But the point is, we're using this real world content to promote conversation, discussion, and we're giving our students the tools in which to have effective discussions. However, there is some research that says that actually, if we ask students questions like this, maybe they are not as responsive as we would like. So there's an activity called talking points, which is an activity that practices exploratory talk. And essentially what they are, and I'll show you some examples in a moment, they're thought-provoking statements which encourage children to talk to each other about a topic, sharing what they know, what they understand about it. But what's important is that these talking points are not questions. They are statements. Because the research shows that statements, they generate more imaginative and longer responses from students than questions do on the same topic. Because they help students to focus on the topic and to compare their point of view with that of others. So, for example, instead of asking you, how does this photo make you feel? I might give you a talking point statement of this. This photo makes me feel scared. And we ask a question, do you agree, or do you and your group agree or disagree with these ideas? Or are you unsure? For what reasons? So again, this photo makes me feel scared. Well, you know what? For me, this photo doesn't make me feel scared because, and you'll be like, oh, wow, interesting. I understand. But for me, I think this is a little bit scary, this photograph, because it shows you the power of water, for example. Another statement, water is more important than food. Well, I think this. You think that. We have a discussion. And if we disagree, that's okay. In fact, in many ways, it's better if students do disagree with each other. 80% of the water is in the sea. Do I agree? Do I disagree? What knowledge do I have on this? I'm activating that information. We should think more carefully about our water footprint. In other words, how much water we use. Do you agree? Do you disagree? So statements like this facilitate more spoken output from the learners. So it's just an alternative. It's just the other side of the coin. Don't ask a question, give a statement. Do they agree or disagree? Another example here. I like this piece of art. I agree, disagree. Tell me in the chat box, do you like this piece of art and why? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's okay. But tell me why. I like this art because. I don't like this piece of art because. I'm not sure. I'm so-so about it. And then other statements connect to the topic. I reduce, reuse, recycle enough already. I could do more to help this problem. Plastic pollution is the biggest problem we have. For those statements, they generate more responses than saying, do you like this piece of art? Because if you said that question, do you like this piece of art? The answer is yes or no. Plastic pollution is the biggest problem we have. Yes, it is. But give it a statement, students have to think a little bit more. Thank you. I think it's Ivana there. I love it as well. I love this piece of art because of the colors and also the creative way in which pieces of plastic have been reused. And of course, you know, there are, of course, other activities you could do with the students. Have a look at the picture. How many different objects can you find? I can find a banana. I can find a dinosaur. I can find buttons. I can find beads. I can find a horse. I can find a man. I can find all sorts of things in the picture. Lovely, Tejan. This piece of art makes us think about the earth. It does. Lovely. Okay, another activity we can do to help our students to have effective discussions is called, Go-Go. It's called Give One, Get One. And again, it starts with a statement from the teacher. What do you think, a question rather, what do you think are the 3 best ways to stay healthy? So we ask that question to students and they, on their own, they write down 3 things. So maybe eat less meat, eat more fruit, go running more often, for example. Are all students going to have the same responses, the same answers? No, they'll have slightly different answers to the questions, but that's okay, because the next part of the activity is a classroom mingle, where they share their ideas with each other. So they find a partner, they give them their first idea, and they say, well, I think the best way to stay healthy is to become vegetarian. And they explain why. And if that other person doesn't have it on their list, they write it on the list, become vegetarian. So I've given you one of my ideas. I then get one idea from that first partner. So they might say to me, well, I think the best way to live a healthier life is to sleep more. Great idea. Didn't have that. I'm going to write it down. I then go and find another partner. But what's important is that you get students to say why. Why do you think it's important to sleep more? Why do you think vegetarianism is the best way to be healthier? And you might think, okay, that's a great idea, but students don't have the language. But that's fine. We give them those language frames to help them. What did you write down? What's on your list? On my list, I wrote this because, oh, interesting. Why do you think that? I'm being an active listener. I'm showing respect. That's a good point. That's a good idea. I'm being empathetic. I'm giving my partner confidence in what they're saying. So to facilitate all of these activities, we have to provide those language frames. Okay, so that's kind of RSC and some sort of discussion activities with images. But let's have a quick look at oracy and reading lessons, because we have lots of activities where we can encourage thoughtful discussion and collaborative work as well. Now, you're all completely, I'm sure, familiar with the KWL chart, what I know, what I want to know, what I learned. You know this stuff. But it does provide a really good springboard for discussion activities. Well, I know this about chocolate. How about you? What do you know? Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. What do I want to know? Well, I want to know where chocolate comes from. And my partner might say, okay, I know where chocolate comes from. Chocolate comes from here. We can have a discussion. Tell me, what do you know about chocolate? Tell me in the chat box. What do you know about the story of chocolate? Any information you know, where it comes from, when it was discovered, how it's made? What do you know about chocolate? I'm sure we all enjoy eating it from time to time. What do you know? And of course, it's difficult for us to replicate the whole oracy aspect here because we're online, we're typing rather than speaking. But these are questions that get students working together. They get students talking. So, oh, wow, look at that. It's got serotonin in it for happiness. Thank you. I did not know it had serotonin in it, but I'm going to make sure I eat lots of chocolate because of that. Chocolate makes us happy. Love that. What else do we know about maybe the history or the story of chocolate? In a minute so you can read the story. Only for kids' stories? Well, interesting. Thank you, Oksana, for that. It boosts cognitive performance. Excellent. So basically what we're saying is we should all be eating more chocolate because it makes us happier and it makes our brain works better as well. Okay, I'm going to zoom into the text so you can read it as well. Just so you can reflect on that. So there we go. Have a quick read of the story of chocolate. It's a fascinating story, right? I mean, they used to get buried with chocolate. Amazing. Chocolate was a currency. You could buy things with chocolate seeds. Amazing. Chocolate a day, that's, I mean, unbelievable, right? Wow. And then of course we can talk about it afterwards. So it's not just a kind of a pre-reading task. There's also post-reading, you know, follow-up discussions, 3-2-1s, for example. What did you find interesting about the story or most surprising? What would you like to know more about? I want to know more about the Aztecs and how they used or how they made the chocolate. I want to fact check this. It says 1519 that the Spanish people arrived in the Aztec capital, but was it really 1519 or was it 1520 or maybe 1518? And how do we know when they arrived? But again, we're having a discussion. What do you think? What did you think was the most interesting? Tell me quickly in the chat box, what did you find most interesting or shocking about this story? Like I say, for me, I think it's being buried with chocolate. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I think that's, for me, the most surprising or shocking thing. Although I think it's quite amazing that they can actually test those kind of, that's the ceramics for chocolate now. It is a really weird and true story. chocolate as currency. Can you imagine that now? My children would be very, very poor. They'd get the chocolate, they'd eat it. Okay, chocolate is currency, very peculiar, right? Okay, but again, we can provide them with language frames to facilitate the process. I found this interesting because, oh, me too. I agree, that was interesting. Really? I didn't think that. What did you find interesting? I'd like to know more about this. I'd like to fact check this, this, and this, and so on. And then just other discussion activities. So here we've got a reading all about what's for lunch. Which of these lunches would you most likely to try? What food from other countries have you tried? Did you like it? What is your perfect lunch? Come back to reading here. What do you think most water is used in your school? What can your school do to save more water? But it's providing a platform for discussion and building these oracy skills. As do collaborative tasks. So remember at the start we said oracy covers discussions, collaborative tasks, and projects, or presentations rather. So within collaborative tasks, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, projects. Because projects promote oracy development, especially when they are group or pair work projects. You're working on something together. You have to say, oh, that's a good idea. Or I'm not sure about that. Let's do that. Because it makes sure that they work together empathetically. They listen to each other. They ask questions of each other. So it promotes oracy development. It promotes autonomous learning. It's learner-centered. Kids love projects. It develops those 21st century skills. Media and information literacy. It builds their confidence. It gives opportunity to be creative, opportunities to express themselves, as well as to develop global and social awareness, as well as the oracy skills again, and they are motivating. So try to incorporate this project work because it leads on to presentation skills as well, and we'll come to that in a second. So, we've got a reading here all about November celebrations. Well, create your own festival. What's the name? What is it celebrating? And if you've got a group of students, there's going to be fevered discussion, but we want to make sure that everybody is involved in that. What do you think? I think we should call the celebration this, or I think we should celebrate that. What do you think? What's your opinion? Do you agree? Well, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. Doing it in a respectful way. Or you give them a choice. Make a poster of a festival from your country and present it. Or find out about a festival in another country and create a presentation on it. So giving them different options as well. So within a group, which one shall we do? Create our own festival, a festival that we know, or a different festival from a different country. Another example here. We had a reading all about roller coasters. Perfect project follow-up. Get them to design their own roller coaster for their local park. In groups, think about a name, a theme. What makes it special? Is it extra high? Is it got lots of loops? What makes it different? And what's the theme? Is it a water theme? Is it a space theme? Is it a Jurassic World kind of theme? And so on. Or we can have more traditional projects like this. So here, it's a group work project, three students in a group. They research a natural wonder, but they have to agree on that. Because that is a life skill. You work in projects at school, at college, at university, in your jobs. And they need to know how to do that. And the seeds for that are sown in school. And of course, that then leads on to presentation skills, where we had those criteria, those rules of standing up straight, speaking clearly, slowly, good pronunciation, eye contact, facial features, body language, and so on. Because presentation skills are important. In fact, Chris Anderson, the head of TED, calls them the 21st century superpower. Presentation skills are the 21st century superpower. But why? Why do you think he says that? What makes them a superpower, do you think? Tell me in the chat box. Why are presentation skills the 21st century superpowers? Right answer, there's no wrong answer here necessarily. But what does being a good presenter allow you? What does it facilitate? It does do that, definitely. All abilities in one talk, definitely. They should be able to explore the topic and be able to present it, absolutely. But I think we're sort of talking in real life here as much as within the classroom. I think for me, that they can be considered superpowers is because if we can be an effective presenter, an effective orator, in other words, having good oracy skills, we can have the power of influence over other people. We can persuade, we can get people to sort of follow us. So I think, you know, if you are a fantastic presenter with those great presenting skills, you have a lot of power. You can make people see your point of view effectively. It makes you a very effective communicator in that respect. So how else can we bring presentation skills into the class? Maybe not in a project type way. I mean, one thing that we always do in young learner classes is show and tell. Now, you might not know it, but show and tell activities are developing your students, your pupils' oracy skills. My little boy, every Friday is show and tell day in his class. He's 6 years old and he loves it. It means he can go into class and he can talk about his favorite things from home. He stands up in front of the class and he talks about it. He might not be standing up straight yet. He might not be pronouncing clearly or his diction being particularly fluent, but it's building those skills slowly. It's giving him the confidence to talk in front of others. Right? So again, we can provide them with language frames. Today, I have brought X into class. I brought this because, And, you know, if you make sure students are standing up straight, making eye contact with other students, looking at everybody in class, using good language, you're building those oracy skills. A similar activity is just called Be the Expert. So every week you choose a different student and you give them a week to talk about or to prepare something to talk about, which is their favorite. So it might be my favorite football team, my favorite singer or group, my favorite TV show, my favorite game, my favorite place to visit. And because it's my favorite, students love talking about these things. Therefore, they feel happy, generally speaking, in standing in front of the class at primary level and saying, well, my favorite TV show is whatever it might be, because. But again, support them with language frames. Now, maybe your students don't have the confidence to sort of come up with their own ideas. That's fine. You can do recitals with them. I used to do this with sort of older students. I'd give them a famous poem to read out, or a passage from a book, or a famous speech to read. But for young learners, you can just give them a short passage from the book that they've read previously and ask them to stand up and to read it out. And by doing that, you're giving them that experience of standing in front of the class and of presenting ideas, reading the text clearly, standing up straight, making eye contact whenever possible. Okay, so many, many ways in which we can bring oracy skills into our students or into the classroom for our students and to develop those really key skills. So for a change, I've finished on time. I just want to sort of sum up very quickly just by saying that we can develop our students' oracy skills by, in the first instance, having high interest content that students want to talk about. Once you've got that content, you can then have those ground rules that they come up with along with you to decide what they should and should not be doing when they're working in groups, when they're doing discussions, and when they're presenting. Make sure you provide language frames, cue cards to support them. It's another way of developing their language skills rather than just directly through grammar or vocabulary as set phrases. And then by thinking about, well, how can I integrate opportunities for oracy into the classes? Not just speaking classes, but all classes. Grammar, vocabulary, reading, writing, listening, whatever it might be. How can I get them working together, discussing, feeding in this language? So I just want to finish with a quote from an organization called Voice 21, who are very active in developing oracy. And I think this really sums up everything that I want to talk about today. And that's this. In school, oracy is a powerful tool for learning. By teaching students to become effective speakers and listeners, we empower them to better understand themselves, each other, and the world around them. It is also a route to social mobility, empowering all students, not just some, to find their voice to succeed in school and life. So I cannot stress enough the importance of incorporating this into our classrooms. And hopefully I've given you plenty of ideas on how you might start to do that with your own young learners. So thank you so much once again for attending today's session. It's been wonderful to speak to the teachers of Ukraine once again. And everyone at National Geographic, we send you all of our hopes, thoughts, best wishes in your current situation, okay? And I love the fact that so many of you are here today, despite issues with electricity and everything else that's going on. So please, do stay in touch with us at National Geographic Learning. You can find out more about us by watching more webinars or by following us on our blog, as well, connecting with us on Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. Just type in National Geographic Learning and you can find us all there. And all of the examples today came from the Young Learner course, Our World, which you can find out more about at eltngl.com/Our World. Or alternatively, you can contact our wonderful team in Ukraine at Linguist. Irina, we met earlier, is in charge there now. So you can contact them there on that website. You can contact them on the phone number or on their Facebook page as well. So once again, I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming today. And if you've come late, if for whatever reason you've left early and you missed a bit, don't worry. The whole conference has been recorded. You will receive that recording tomorrow, around about this time, along with the certificate, okay? I know the certificate is important to you. Don't worry, it's coming tomorrow. Keep an eye out for an email from Zoom. Check your spam email boxes as well as your main inbox, okay? I don't think there are any questions there. I don't think any popped up, no. But if there are any, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box. And we've got a couple of moments, to ask or answer any questions. I'm just going to stop the share for now. Chat, that's great. It means that we covered everything that needed to be covered. So once again, thank you so much to all of you. Stay safe, stay well, look after yourselves, look after your loved ones, look after your children at school, and all of our thoughts are with you in these difficult times. Take care, stay safe, stay well. Bye-bye for now.